If you're hopping on the Final Fantasy XIV train with the Switch 2, welcome. In this video, we'll take a look at the game on PS5, Steam Deck, and Switch 2, and lay out their target frame rates, resolution, and battery life, and how they do with various use cases. Before we go over the platforms, let's highlight the most performance-impactful settings outside of resolution that are available to adjust on console versions we'll want to be familiar with. You should adjust them as you would like depending on your frame rate tolerance, desire for clearer readability, and maybe interest in battery life depending on how relevant they are to the content you're doing in-game. The character and object quantity setting is huge if you didn't know about it, and you may not have since it's not under the graphical settings but under other configuration settings. It makes the most difference in packed zones of course, but if you want a little higher FPS in these circumstances, then you should turn this down. Or if you would like to see as many people as possible for like immersion's sake, you can crank this up and take the FPS hit. Another important setting for performance is battle effects from other players because the game becomes a light show of particle effects by endgame, and I recommend if you're having trouble seeing where you are or want a few more FPS to at least turn these to simple. I would avoid off because some party members like healers or ninja will have important AoE markers you may want to be aware of. When it comes to handheld platforms, these settings aren't just about performance either, but maybe getting a little more out of your battery life too if you want. We'll be looking at frame rate in two capacities: realistic situations such as anything you'll run into while doing your dailies in the game, and demanding areas which will be like Limsa when it's packed or field operations. We'll also discuss control method alternatives. All versions work with USB keyboards and mice, which I'll be using in this video along with importing my PC version configuration settings. And L1 plus R3 brings up a virtual mouse mode, but there are other nice quick options as well. Communication can be important too, so no matter which platform you're on here, you may want to get familiar with the quick chat messages too, which are nice because they auto-translate to other languages. We'll start with the PS5 version. Its resolution depends on your display, but it has support for rendering at 4K and 1080 with a dynamic resolution option. And for frame rate, realistically, the lower your resolution, the more often you're gonna hit 60 FPS if you're okay with a softer image. Otherwise, you'll be looking at the 40s and 50s. Demanding areas can totally hit 60 depending on your resolution, but these areas may pull it down to 40, possibly 30 depending on your quantity settings too, in the absolute worst scenarios. For other control options, the PS4 and PS5 touchpads are great ways to quickly interact with the screen. Overall, the experience is pretty comparable to PC with controller. Next up, we'll have the Steam Deck version. The resolution will be 1280 by 800, and we'll have it set to the high laptop settings, as that's usually what I've seen recommended. For frame rate, realistically, you'll get 40 to 60 or 50 to 60 depending on your effects settings. Demanding areas can take it down to 30 or 40 though, possibly 20 depending on your character quantity settings. Either way though, you'll likely want to set the screen to 40 Hz anyway just to get much more battery life. The benefit of Steam Deck is that you have the most control over it, which will be good for finding a compromise in settings that you can get more battery life out of it too. The trade-off is how many extra steps may be involved in setting the game up, as well as delving into a rabbit hole for longer battery life if you're pursuing that. For the game itself on Steam Deck, you'll want to go and get Proton GE, and need to enable dev mode on your Steam Deck to disable power saving throttling your connection while playing, and if you're like me and don't own the Steam version, you can either pull some trickery with command line shortcuts or use a third-party launcher, which if you want mods you may opt for. Just a heads up, you probably want to avoid linking your Steam account to your Square Enix account if you've been playing the game without Steam, because it will replace your usual PC client as your default PC platform, and you'll need to own everything for the game on Steam and purchase it through Steam going forward. For the other control options, of course you've got the Steam Deck's touchscreen and even the touchpads. And now we'll talk about the Switch 2 version. This version, if you've already paid for the full game after the first 30 days, requires its own subscription separate from the sub you would pay to play on other platforms. So it could be your main version with one sub, or if you want to play it in addition to the PC version, you'll need to pay for an extra sub. So let's see how it holds up with that caveat. The resolution is 1080p when docked, and undocked it's 720. And unlike the other versions, there's actually no anti-aliasing on Switch, so it looks pretty sharp, and that 720 undocked isn't blurry, though I can't really record that well. For frame rate, realistically you're going to be seeing around 30 to 40, possibly lower depending on your effects settings. Demanding areas will still be between 30 to 40 depending on your quantity settings, though if a boss is bringing intense effects to the fight, the game can drop into the 20s or lower depending on your effects setting. And either way, the game undocked is capped at 30, and there's an option in the settings to also cap it at 30 when docked. Now when it comes to battery life, realistically you should be able to get your dailies in on a full charge. To test demanded content, I was in Occult Crescent for an hour and it used 40% of the battery life, and for me that's a good session, but some may be wary of going into Fork Tower. Right now my rule may be to not queue if I have less than 25% battery, but I can also see myself pushing that. This wasn't enough for me though, so I also went and did an hour of MSQ on my ult, and that only took 20%, so if you're progressing through the MSQ, you'll likely get like 3 hours, possibly more, or maybe less depending on the variety of stuff you're doing. On paper, that seems like pretty great battery life, and I think it is. It's just that there are so many use cases for an MMO that it's a whole rabbit hole to just explore how the battery will really hold up in real world scenarios, so I'll just stop myself there. For other control options, while docked you can utilize the right Joy-Con as a mouse cursor if you need it in a pinch. While undocked you can do that, or you can just use the touchscreen as well. And one more note here I got from my testing, I use an MMO Logitech mouse that is discontinued outside of Japan, and on PS5 the side buttons actually work, and not surprisingly they also work on Steam Deck. On Switch 2 though, the buttons don't work at all, so it'd be great if they could do that since somehow on PS5 they can. Also, load times were patched on Switch 2, so we don't need to worry about them anymore. Overall, the Switch 2 version is a pretty great compromise for an out-of-the-box experience to just pick up and play. Of course, it should go without saying though that having the Steam Deck play the PC version just gives it so much customization and configuration outside of the game itself that if you're up for fiddling with it, it may be more your speed. For just picking up and playing, the Switch 2 makes it simple, but at a premium. Thanks for watching everyone. Coming up, I'm going to be taking some editing gigs and some sponsorships, so you may be seeing those around, but there's still videos in the works, so stay tuned for those, and thank you all again for watching.